think the radio silence is a yes.
Are we going in alphabetical order again?
No, so this is just whoever wants to ask can just ask.
Well, I'll let the other ones ask, since I have to think more.
Yeah, go for it.
I kind of have a million questions, but I have to choose a few. I think, you know what, right now I'm in Europe. I've been traveling this year, and it's very eye-opening and interesting. Right now I'm in Warsaw, and it's kind of lovely. And I know that there are some video game companies here. Um, I'm hoping to visit CD Projekt Red. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, I wanted to ask you because I know like probably California is the biggest place for, I mean, especially for movies, but I guess also for games. I live in Houston. I think Austin is also a big spot for that. Um, I guess like Atlanta, you know. But there's studios all over the planet in Europe. Um, I wanted to ask you, as far as you know, how willing are these companies to hire people that don't live in their country? You know, if there are problems with
Yeah.
like visas and stuff like that. Because I mean, it's great here, and I wouldn't mind, you know, spending some time here or living here. And I guess it's easier than like living in LA where it's very expensive and like, easy.
So where do you live right now? In Austin?
Right now, no. So right now I'm in Warsaw, the Poland capital.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
so you're in Europe right now as we speak.
yeah, but yeah, but usually like my family, my house is in Houston, Texas.
Oh, it's in Houston. Got it.
Mhm.
So then you're asking specifically about working
Yeah, like
in one of these places
yeah, like
from
how difficult it is to get a job in a foreign country. Are they even looking for someone like if I live in America, but would someone hire me from like Germany or whatever with their
what is your citizenship at?
I'm American. I mean,
You are American,
I was born in Ukraine, but I got an American citizenship
and you
last
just
year.
happen to live in Europe as we speak. Got it.
Yeah.
Um, um, so the visa thing is not really an issue then, is it? Because you're an American citizen, so you can
Yeah.
work wherever you want in America.
Mhm.
Um, so that's not a problem. So the question then I would have is, um, do you want to work in America or do you want to work in Europe?
I'm very open-minded. That's why I'm asking if I don't find a job in America, but I do like in Europe, uh, is it difficult to like move? Personally, for me, it would not be difficult like in terms of like my stuff or whatever. I can move easily, but are there like for the employers, is this a problem?
Yeah. So obviously there's going to be a difference, right? Depending on where you want to move, uh, in terms of country and such, right? So, for
Mhm.
instance, if you move to a country that has very strict immigration laws, then it's going to be harder.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. Um, is it going to be easier for a client or a company to hire? Let's say I live in Houston or Austin, right?
Mhm.
Where the job's at that you're applying for, and I am applying for it too. Yeah, of course. If I'm a little bit better than you, or if I'm obviously better than you, there's no question. But like if I'm a little bit better, or even if you were a little bit better, I might most likely get the job because of how much easier it is to just get me in
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
So that's going to be always true, right? But what is also true is that if I am like again like the same skill as I just proposed hypothetically, just like kind of good, but you're like perfect for the job, like you are
Mhm.
really good and you really nail the style of the game that they're working on, you're really nailing the quality that they're looking for, they would look into some relocation for sure, especially if
Mhm.
they're a bigger studio and they can afford to do so.
Okay.
Okay.
You really have to be a superstar.
Yeah. So I always say you can only control two things: the quality of your work and the connections that you make. That's it. If you don't work on your work and your work stays mediocre for years, then you're not going to, you're not going to, all of this, no one's going to just give you a job. And on the reverse, like if you are really good, but you don't talk to anybody, you don't share your work to anybody, you won't get a job because nobody knows you exist.
Right.
So if you do both, work on your work and you go out of your way to talk to people and make friends and you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
you go and do like real life stuff, you know, and or even online, you'll that's how you begin to grow that audience, and including your network, like your friends and colleagues that you're probably going to potentially work with in the future.
Mhm.
Um, but like all the other stuff, for instance, like the point you made about like visas and like yeah, it's, to me, it's obvious that those are things that are challenging, and I don't have the answers to those because I don't know every nation's policies and companies' policies when it comes to immigration. All I know is that I have seen people from countries that you would never think that people could escape
Mhm.
and get out and end up working at some of the biggest studios in America, and they're all immigrants. You know,
Yeah.
I can name a few: Raf
Like
Grassetti. He's from
Jama
Brazil.
also, right?
Yeah, John, Raf Grassetti,
Mm.
um, Chris Costa, um, Dominic Queck, Maciej Kachara.
Mm.
Who's another one that's crazy good? Oh yeah, Vitaly Bogorov.
Oh.
Um,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Moldova, right? Or
yeah. I mean, like, there's not an it's not like unlikely. Like, there's like nobody. Like, there's actually quite a lot.
yeah.
And whenever people talk about like they're here, they're taking our jobs, they're taking our jobs. That's only really true in two instances: the best jobs and the jobs that nobody wants to do.
Right.
It's not those like medium jobs, right? It's like the jobs that like like there was a thing where certain states like outlawed like immigration work, like they had to have like very like citizen based documentation for them to even work, and so with those strict regulations, a lot of the farmers were almost going out of business,
Hmm.
and they even tried to increase the rate in which they paid people to see if that would help. But even if they were like paying, like they said, look, we want to hire Americans, but Americans don't want to fucking do the work, you know. Even
Yeah.
when they're even when you account for paying a lot of money or a lot more money rather, and so they had to like revert back and go back to like hiring like illegal immigrants. You know, there's a stigma obviously around this idea of illegal immigrants because the word illegal makes it seem really really bad.
Hmm.
Um, like they're doing something wrong. It's the same with like when you look at like drugs and stuff. Like isn't it kind of silly to think that there
That's
are
great.
people in jail, literally in jail right now,
That's insane.
for like selling or having possession of marijuana, where now
Hmm.
like in in a lot of states in which they're in jail, it's legal.
Yeah.
Could you imagine like being
And
in jail right now?
it's probably gonna be legal across the
Everywhere pretty soon.
country. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's going to be even crazier because there's still people literally in jail for these crimes that once
Yeah.
were, and that's so sucky. We literally ruined these people's lives for like just because we just realized that it's not too big of a deal, and we shouldn't
Yeah.
be criminalizing people that are drug users.
Mm.
And so anyway, my point is that like I'm not like I'm not like I don't know all immigration policy and laws, but I do know that there are quite a lot of people who do really well and come to our country. And like I said, it seems like all the real jobs are going to either the best, right?
Mm.
Because the best That's why I always thought it's bad business to be racist, right?
Mhm.
Because
Oh yeah, if you don't want to let like mache in your country,
yeah, you fucked
that's
up,
to
dude.
your detriment.
Yeah, you fucked up. Yeah,
Yeah,
and if you don't let Frank Zane come in
yeah,
or Ralph Grassetti and some of these beasts,
yeah. You're
you're
losing.
an idiot. In fact, I think it should be the reverse when it comes to immigration policies, where it should be harder to leave the country rather than getting in.
Mhm.
Because then, if we can keep the Maches and the Vitalis and the what's so whoever, right, like to
Yeah.
stay in our country, um, then it will be harder for them to leave. Like if I am Poland, it should have been really really hard for Mache to come or leave Poland. But the reality is hard
Mhm.
for Mache to come to America. It
Yeah.
was the reverse. And so, but I don't know. I know in American immigration, we really don't like unskilled brown people. So if you don't have these things, then you might do better. Currently, it's true, you know,
Mhm.
um, because the northern border, there's a lot of illegal immigrants, but we don't necessarily look at illegal immigrants in the same vein, do we? Like my friend, he was telling me he's Canadian, and he said he was a legal immigrant, but he's
Mhm.
like white and like speaks with like an Americanish accent, you know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you would have never known. Like you can't discriminate on him because you would
Mhm.
have never guessed. But he said he was like, yeah, I was technically illegal for like 2 years, and I was like, well, cool, dude. And so I don't know. I don't know what those
Okay, I
policies
get it.
are.
Okay.
I don't
So
know.
it's
I
a
don't
bit
know
of a
how
challenge.
challenging. Yeah, I don't know how challenging it might be for you. I just know that you make it less challenging if you're a badass and you do go to events and make
Oh,
friends and connect with people more often.
okay. So
You
it's a
take your
challenge, but
chance.
it happens.
Yeah,
It's
you take the chances of letting these opportunities happen from 0% to 10% to 20% to 30%. The more you do these two things I mentioned,
yeah.
because you can't like even if like let's say you are perfect for a job and everything lines up, um but maybe like they just don't have a spot for you. Like they would like to hire you, but they technically cannot, right? Because there's literally no room. Where
Yeah.
other instances, studios will be like, we don't have any room, but we're gonna hire you anyway because you're so dope. You know that happens too. There was an instance where a French artist was visiting his family in France, and then when he went to go back home, and he was working at DreamWorks at the time. Uh, his passport expired while he was in France,
Mhm.
and they were like, "Nope, you can't go back." And he was like, "But I have to like go back. I work there. My home, my family, most immediate family was like right out there. Like, you
Mhm.
gotta let me go home." And they're like, "Nope, you can't because you don't have a passport." And so DreamWorks, when they got wind of this, like they're like, all right, well, let's get him a passport. And in a matter of like
Mhm.
a week or something, they got him like a brand new passport.
Mhm.
So he wasn't like trapped. Or my other buddy, he was working at Blizzard at the time. Same thing happened to him pretty much, except he lost his passport. Um, and it took him 3 or 4 weeks, almost a month, for him to get back to the States. And that was Blizzard. So either Blizzard doesn't really give a fuck and they just like they take their time, or DreamWorks just dropped the bomb of money on it. It was just like, we're making this happen because money is power,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
And so that I don't know the circumstances of why or what, but either case, both these situations, the companies did end up fighting for their employees to um, get to their
Okay.
get back to work, you know. And with
I,
with with that being said, I've seen this a couple other times, and it's usually these badasses. All right, you were saying?
I feel like almost anything I can ask you, the answer is just be patient and get better. And
Yeah,
so
that's the general
even
theme.
this, yeah.
Yeah,
Even this,
that's
that it applies even to this question. Just if you're good enough, then anything can happen.
yeah. So a lot of why people ask those types of questions is based off of lack of information, right? Ignorance, right? And insecurity,
Yeah, that's
right?
that's the point.
And that's completely normal, man. Like
Yeah.
everyone is insecure. Everybody has isn't sure of themselves, and so for me, I'm quite sure about a lot of things.
Mhm.
But even the things that I'm not sure about, I understand with just time and patience, I can sort it out. You know, I think there are just some universal truths that are hard to dispute that I've just kind of wrapped my whole life's philosophy around. And there's other things that aren't so intuitive, or my intuition has led me astray that I just need more time to let that sort itself out. But like for instance, what's a good example? Like for instance, just like programming, right? Like I thought like this would be so much more challenging, but I became addicted to it, and then I realized that it's very much as creative as art can be, just in a different way.
You've never tried it before, right? You don't have any background in programming.
I tried it a long, long time ago, but I didn't really pay attention. It was like you're in physics class, and doesn't mean now like if you just picked up physics again, you just you pick up where you left off.
Okay.
It's completely absent-minded.
Mhm.
But I would lie if I never tried it. I made like a text adventure game once, but I think I just copy pasted code rather
Mhm.
than actually code it from scratch. Where now I can code it from scratch with complete confidence.
Okay. And speaking of making connections and talking to people and being nice, I want to let other people talk, but I just wanted to say this real quick. I just wanted to thank you. I mean, I when I moved to America, I was very lost. Like I went to art school for kids, um, like when I was a teenager, a kid. But then I kind of abandoned it. And when I moved to America, I wasn't sure if I was going to pursue it further. Like I didn't know what to do with the art skill. I didn't think that I could get like a good job in it. When I got introduced to like concept art and digital art and all that stuff, you were one of the first people that inspired me. And
That's nice.
I think yeah, I think you're like one of the biggest people responsible for like inspiring me to find some kind of track because I was very lost. I didn't even think I was gonna be an artist. I was like maybe I'll just study something else or just go to like a trade school and just get some kind of profession quickly. But I'm sticking with it and yeah, in many ways thanks to you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. That's 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 why I do it. I know it's helpful. Obviously, um, the class has a cost, but like that cost goes straight to me. And so I take it very seriously to help my students, and those I don't that don't have the funds to afford a class. I try to do free or cheaper alternatives. So I do appreciate the kind words, man. It's very nice.
I'll let other students talk. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mike, you had a question. I don't know if you still do, but anyone else too?
Yeah, Win wrote a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Did he win? Write it down. Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Okay, AJ, what is your take on narrative driven designs like the new God of War and Uncharted slash Last of Us? Well, I think God of War is less narrative than Uncharted and Last of Us. Um, but it all depends on what you mean by narrative, because a lot of the character designs that you might see, like, okay, let me put it to you this way: like a lot of times people think that the artists or even the creators might have had a lot of like story in mind while they're designing stuff, but the reality is they might not have. You know, they might have just thought it was cool. You know, it's not as deep as it may seem. For instance, the God of War stuff, I think there was a little bit of that, but at some point too, they were like designing characters and creatures that just looked cool and fit the part that they needed to play in the game, right? And where Last of Us, a lot of the character designs are very narratively driven, just as much as you would imagine like Tarantino hiring an actor to play a specific role, right? Like Tarantino writes roles for Samuel L. Jackson, knowing how Samuel L. Jackson's going to act. So that's kind of how he would character design, you know? Um, Christopher Nolan, same way, right? Like Christopher Nolan casts his friends and his actor friends to play these roles that he knows that they can do a good job. So as a character designer for video game narrative, I would imagine that's the same case. Like you just got to focus on like what does a character like Ellie have to look like for us to understand who she is, right? But like a lot of what I've done in my career is less narratively driven. It's mostly just aesthetics. And I've always talked about this before, like in other contexts. I always say there's a difference between Boba Fett and Darth Vader, right? So you look at someone like Darth Vader. Darth Vader is designed in a way that it actually originally started just to impose a certain type of feeling of fear and monster, like villain, like this real hardcore villain. It had like this aesthetics of like old samurais and stuff like this. This was kind of the direction that they went with Vader, but they knew he was a main character, a major villain, so they wanted to make him look like one. Where Boba Fett, they were just like bounty hunter, and it literally was like a coin flip, like a coin flip of a design. Because I think the first versions of Boba Fett were actually some early designs of the stormtroopers, and they were just like, yeah, this looks cool, maybe we could just turn this into a bounty hunter. Instead of it all being white, we'll just kind of put more color to it, and so that way it looks different from what we were kind of doing with what you call it, the stormtroopers. And mainly because they already were working on the second film, and they wanted to kind of create this new character, and so they're trying to use like older stuff to probably help supplement that stuff. And my point is that like that's it. Like it wasn't anything more than that. It wasn't like this kind of elaborate design process and iteration. It was just like, this looks kind of cool, let's just go with this, you know? And so I feel like a lot of times people read too much into design. So I think narratively speaking, that specific design, um, like for Last of Us and all that stuff, I think a lot of that is character and narratively driven, but not all the stuff in God of War. Just maybe like the main characters and main villains. But that's usually true for every studio or every project. There's always going to be a couple that really do need to hit certain notes on a story, on a story front. But yeah, anyway, um, I usually encourage people to focus on. I usually encourage people to focus on what's the agenda that you need to follow through. Because even if you do like story driven stuff for your own concepts, you gotta like then come up with a story. You gotta come up with a cool story and then be able to interpret that. But as a concept artist, it doesn't necessarily mean you are going to be telling stories. Usually somebody else is doing that for you, and you just make sure that your images are cool. Like if you think about like Harry Potter was already a story. So if I get picked up to work on Harry Potter, right? Like it's not like I have to, like it's not like I have to help write the story. The story is kind of already written. What I have to do is like design, the what are those things called, the death dudes? I forgot. But like let's say they want me to hire me to design that. So I'll look at what the original versions were, what the book says about them, and just do my best to try to design that to be honest to the story and the material. But again, my goal is to focus on the conceptual visualization of this design to make it look uh, incredible. So hopefully that gives some insight on that. But if you want more narratively driven designs, like if you want your design to tell a story, then you just need to tell a story in your head of why your designs look a certain way. Like give yourself a very clear mission. Like for instance, the monkey has a giant rune thing on his back. Like why? Just think about why, and then keep designing to that why. Anyway. Very random, but would you happen to know fashion designer Rich Owens? I think I know of him. I'll check it out later. Rich Owens. Len, you had a question? You can ask it openly with the mic. Be easier, so I don't have to read. Len? Hello?
I have one too.
Oh no. Too many questions now. Len, are you there? Yeah, feel free to unmute your mic so you can communicate with words.
Hi, here. Oh,
There you
shit,
go.
I forgot. Okay. Oh, yeah, this is just like a problem I have for a long time because my style is quite anime because that's what I grew up with, like the anime art style. And some people I met at EGX or Comic Con that look at my portfolio, they said I should ditch it, stop drawing anime style, and I haven't stopped out about it.
Why? Why did they tell you that? What was the reasoning?
In my portfolio, like before I have cartoony style, and I also try to mimic like the realistic style too, but I don't really like those style very much. At least they look pretty, but I don't feel comfortable drawing them. So my portfolio have a lot more anime style, and some artists told me to stop following that style. So
yeah, I heard that part. I'm
doubt,
asking why though. Like, why did they tell you that? Did they tell you why?
no, I didn't say.
That seems
And
odd.
then I just assumed
you can't just tell people to stop doing something and then just and with no explanation why.
They told me that I'm assuming that probably because many companies in the UK they prefer realistic styles more. So
are you sure about
maybe
that?
that's why. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
You should have asked them that. Yeah, let me be a voice of reason, hopefully for you. Anime is incredibly popular, not just in Japan or Korea, but like around the world, even like in Mexico. Like Mexicans love Dragon Ball Z, and so like so anime, that genre is an incredibly popular genre. So if you start thinking of stuff that are like in that kind of aesthetic, like Dragon Ball Z, right, is a pretty popular one. Naruto, right? One Punch Man, Attack on Titan, and even one of the most popular ones, something like along the lines of Pokemon. So it's like, it seems to me that they don't know what they're talking about. Like stop doing anime. Why? Anime is like a multi-billion-dollar industry that is internationally known and respected. It's actually only recently Western films, specifically the Marvel movies, right, that are really making waves internationally. And it's because they're actually more like anime than they are Western, right?
Oh, you said, yeah.
Right, because you think about what anime is like over the fucking top, right? It's like over exaggeration, storytelling, and like I think One Piece, right, has like an array of characters that are fucking bizarre. Like you have all sorts of an arrayment. Yeah, you know what I mean? If you think about like Final Fantasy, right? Like the last one that they'd released that I remember had a literal like boy band as your party, right? Fighting like literally gods and monsters. You know, what comes close to that? Freaking the Avengers, right? Like Avengers, like spoiler alert, Endgame, at the very end, like it literally looks like something that you would never imagine could ever hit big screen and that people would love on the Western audiences. The Eastern audiences were already in. They're like, yeah, man, this shit's tight. It's like anime. Like you got like Spider-Man riding on a Pegasus with a Valkyrie from Norse mythology, you know, fighting
Yeah.
giant space whales. Like I could see that in Gurren Lagann, you know, and so
True. Oh,
it's
you
yeah. Then you take a
wow.
movie as pretentious as like Interstellar. By the way, I love that movie. It doesn't even come close to these fucking numbers, right? What's
Yeah.
another like very gritty, very Western cowboy American culture? Like only we care about that stupid shit. Not everybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you start to tap into people's imagination and you start to show people this extraordinary world, that's when people start to really turn their heads. Like you look at Miyazaki, right? Like those are the types of things that get people excited around the world. It's the same way I feel about soccer. It's like in America we don't really care so much about it, but the rest of the world does. So my question usually
Yeah.
is, my question really is like, are we the actual outliers here in America and everybody else got it right? For instance, uh, food, right? So when I went to Spain recently for work, the proportions of food was very, very minimal, very small portions. Like I remember I ordered breakfast. It literally was just one toast, a
Mm-hmm.
small bowl of fruits, and a coffee. That was like a meal. Okay.
Yeah.
Where in
Yeah.
America, that's a side dish. Like if I want that same dish, like if I want like just a
Mhm.
coffee, um, a toast, and a bowl of fruit, right? If there's no, there's that's not option one. That's not like a menu order menu number one, right? Right? It's in the
Yeah.
sides, and so I order, and I have to order both of them, and then after I order, let's say the toast, and I order the fruits, there's a very likelihood that my waitress will ask me, "Is that it?" Right?
Oh.
When I was in Spain, they didn't really care. They're like, "Oh, that's what you ordered. That's what you get," right? And
Yeah.
they don't question they don't question the validity of your
Honestly.
proportions. In fact, yeah, in fact, like in America, yeah, like I remember one time I ordered like just edamame just to eat because I wasn't that hungry, and my friend was like, "Are you sure, man? Like that's all you want to eat?" And I was just like, this is actually fine." It's like, are you sure you want to eat all of that though? You know, like they like ordered like this huge not
Portion
like
it.
yeah,
Portion
like
in America.
something that looks like it could feed a family of three, you know, like just for them. It was like this huge nacho bowl, like nachos and like cheese, but it was like massive. And
Yeah.
so anyway, getting to my point is that like, you know, I feel like when people say
Mhm.
this stuff, it's not necessarily wise. Okay. It's not good
Oh.
advice for someone like you who's just trying to figure shit out. Okay.
Yeah.
And so
I have
let's talk
that's a
about why that's yeah, well, let's talk about why that's not good advice. So
okay.
first of all, there's not anything wrong with understanding that there is a market that doesn't want anime. That's true. But
Yeah.
the problem with that premise is that it denies the fact that there is a huge market in anime. Okay. So a better question that like they should have like once they look at your portfolio, they see a bunch of anime. A question they should have asked you first is, do you like this aesthetic? Do you like this style? Right? Like where
Yeah.
would you want to work? Like what are your favorite studios? Like get in your head, like where do you want to work? If you were to say something like along the lines of like, I would like to work for Squaresoft or some of these other companies that do like this more anime style, right? Then
Yeah.
my advice to you wouldn't be, well, you should stop doing anime. My advice to you would be then like, okay, so then just do whatever they're doing, but better. Like bring something else to the table so that your anime style stands out, right?
Mm.
Right? Because if I was to just say don't do anime at all, you know,
Mhm.
hold on,
Yeah.
I'm finding a reference right now. Okay, that means I'm an idiot because there's an incredibly successful artist who does anime style and makes
Mhm.
quite a good, like definitely six figures, no problems. In fact, when he did his Patreon, he was making like 10 grand every 2 weeks, I think it was.
What?
My buddy Ross Trend gets close to that style. So clearly, you can totally do whatever the fuck you want. You just got to be good at it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like if you were to show me like your drawings and it was just clearly like you just drew Pikachu and it looks just like Pikachu, you know, like it's not like you didn't try anything, you know? Like if you just showed me, like if I looked at your portfolio and it was just stuff like this, I would say that's not a job because somebody already does this, you know? But if I type in fan art, let's see what we can find. Maybe we can find some good examples. Yeah, so if you showed me like something like this, that gets closer to like, oh, this person has some sense of design and ingenuity. Like even this silly one right here, right? Let me see if I can find some good ones. I know there's some really good ones out there. Yeah,
I remember this one artist that designed Pokemon to be very realistic, like the concept artist for the Detective Pikachu one.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that you should go that direction either. I'm saying like you can even stay within the kind of genre, like stuff like this. You know, like you can stay within the genre, just bring value to it. You know.
Okay.
Like this is cool. Like this Pikachu Vegeta. You know, but if you draw like an exact replica of the design, you are of no value because everybody else can do that. It's not hard to just copy what already exists. It's harder to reinvent it. Okay. So if you look at a lot of this stuff, I mean, like, I would be weirded out if someone looked at this and said, you know what you should do? You should not do anime. Right? Like if this was in your portfolio, right? Like you showed up and like, I'm having a hard time getting a job. Like, you know what? Like, you should just get rid of anime. You should stop doing it. Like I kind of question their perspective of why they would say that. Like I feel like it's a personal thing. Like they don't like anime, and that's totally fine. Like you don't have to like stuff. Like I don't like the Twilight franchise. You know, remember that? Like the one with the vampire, the werewolf love story with Bella. Anyway, I don't like that franchise, but I can respect why it was successful and why other people would love it. Another a little bit more controversial one. I don't like Harry Potter, and I don't like Lord of the Rings, like the movies. I never liked them. I always thought they were a little too boring. But I understand why people love them, and I understand why they're so good. Like I understand why they're good. Like I think that they're good. I just don't like them. You know what I mean? Like that can exist. Like I can both not like something, but understand and respect why it's good, why people think it's good. Because I realize my opinion is in the minority, and my opinion is valid. You know, I'm allowed to not like things. But if I was to, let's say, work on a Lord of the Rings game, I would know what it would take to make it good. Right? Lord of the Rings is really heavily fantasy, and it's the charm of that fantasy. Depending on what they're going for thematically, that's where you want to go. That's where you want to start. It's the charm of like just this like wholeheartedly fantasy. It's like Dungeons and Dragons in real life. It's like everything we would like whenever we think of like classical magical fantasy, Lord of the Rings hits that button real hard. And I actually like that stuff too. I just don't like the way the Lord of the Rings told its story. It just felt really, really boring to me.
It's really long too.
Yeah, but other people are totally into it. They love it, and they're allowed to. They're allowed to like stuff.
Okay, got it.
So does that help?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So
a lot.
Yeah. So my point to you is you should focus on quality rather than the genre. Unless the genre, if your genre is very obscured, right? I'd probably say, you know, you might want to do a couple concepts that are not that niche, you know, that's like super niche. Like you just draw really, really, really rendered sponges. You know, like you go to Walmart and you just get a sponge and you just render the hell out of it, and like it's like a really convincing looking sponge. I'd be like, I don't know if that's a job, but that's objective. That my opinion there would be very objective, you know, because I mean, you couldn't think of a job that would require you to render sponges, but I can think of a million jobs that could require you to be anime style, including working for some of the biggest studios in the industry. So that person was wrong. They were naive.
Yes. Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Brittany, you had a question?
Yeah, do you have time?
Yeah, I might be able to take your question and maybe one last one. Yeah.
Okay. I think I have there's two parts to my question. I was wondering how important is the in-house experience, and like I live on the East Coast right now. I want to move to the West Coast, but I don't necessarily want to live in LA, and I enjoy working remotely. Is it nearly impossible to get work without in-house experience?
No, I got to work all the time. I mean, I have in-house experience, but I don't think that's why I got the job.
Okay.
Yeah, so that wasn't that long of a question at all, or answer. No, it's pretty simple. It goes back to the idea of all that really matters is the quality of your work. In fact, recently I just got approached. I think it fell through. They were trying to go real fast, but they literally were like, "We need like a concept by today," and they messaged like Wednesday, I think it was, and it fell through because I guess just the timeline didn't work out. But they weren't like, "We need in-house. Do you have in-house experience?" That's not even a question. Even when I worked at in-house, when I first got hired, they weren't like, "Do you have in-house experience?" You know what I mean? Like, like I think there are jobs that make sense, right? Like if I was like a firefighter, I think it would help if I like put out a fire. You know, like I've been out in the field, not just theoretically understanding what it would be like to be a firefighter, but actually have gone out and fought fires, even at a small scale or even in a controlled environment, right? Going through academy or something. But in terms of concept art, you can literally have no experience working on like a AAA game and work for AAA companies. Okay.
Okay.
And the reason why this is true, because with our field of work, you can see whether you can do that job or not. They're hiring you specifically because you can do something that most people cannot do, regardless of your experience or not. And I know this is true because I just know too many young artists who just come straight out of college who quite literally have no experience other than college and even like life experience, you know? In fact, me and my friends, we talk about this a lot. We like one of my buddies, his main complaint, he complains a lot about these young artists. And the reason why he complains about them is because it's more of like an ungratefulness. There's some of these people who are working at these really nice companies and there's like a little bit of problems that they don't like, you know? And then they get like real bent out of shape about it. And then they just start like talking all this smack or whatever. But that's like their first real big studio job, you know? And they think that like, it's the whole grass is greener type of situation where my friend who's worked at many studios, you know, who's worked at many great and wonderful large studios, like by far says like the studio that he's working at currently is the best studio that you could probably imagine to work for, you know, and these people are yet still complaining about it. Right. I remember like working at Blizzard and hearing this type of stuff a lot more than you would think. And you know, I used to be a plumber. I pulled like a dead cat out of a drain. So like I have a very clear respect for labor, and looking at what we do as concept artists, I'm like, this is very low labor and it's very fun. Even on the days that are a little bit harder, it's still fun, you know? Like we had some problems in our own house, like so the plumber had to go like snake the drain, and it was real bad. The guy was like you could tell the guy was visibly like sick, and I was like, I'm sorry, dude, got a big family, got a lot of stuff going down through the pipes, man, you know? But like that is different than like, oh, I gotta work overtime on a concept. Now, let's not get too caught up in this principle, because I also think overtime is unnecessary, and perpetual overtime. I think some overtime is kind of necessary. It's inevitable, right? But perpetual overtime I think is unnecessary. That's just bad management. But getting back to the point, you don't need a ton of experience or studio experience to know how to like work with people if you're a decent human. And you don't need to learn how to paint dope. You should have already done that part of it, and that's why they hired you. You know, like the only thing I can imagine that would be valuable for you to learn ahead of time for in-house is just like file and folder management, like to organize and send your work across a bunch of different threads, like managing and file organization, right? And maybe like learning how to talk in meetings and stuff like this. Maybe that can have some value, but like all that stuff could literally be learned on the job. Where if you don't know how to paint a monster and they ask you to paint a monster and you don't know how and you're expecting them to teach you, that is not realistic. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was also wondering like about like the network you build being in-house. Like, is that a big loss for not doing it?
Yeah, that's definitely a big loss for sure. But again, you could still network with the people through online. You know, I made friends with people that I've worked with only online. I haven't met them ever in real life, but I'm sure it'd be fine if we did. But
Okay.
the value of in-house networking is that you can meet more people than just the immediate people that are art directing you or giving you directions, right? Like whenever I work, I usually talk to producers and creative directors and art directors. When you go in-house, you could talk to the animators, you could talk to the 3D artists, you could talk to whoever is willing to talk to you and make friends that way, right? Where in the circumstance of remote work, you don't talk to people, right? You can't just randomly email like an animator that's on the team, like, hey, what's up? And they're just like, hey, who the fuck are you? You know? But if you're like in studio and you just happen to walk by them at lunch and you just spark a natural conversation, that kind of stuff you miss out on, of course, right? In fact, when I worked at Blizzard, Sony Santa Monica, I was actually more friendly. I had like more friends, like a lot more friends on the modeling team. Like I got along with the modelers way more than my fellow concept artists. In fact, I would go to lunch with the modelers than the concept artists. You know? Do you understand?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, cool. And Mike, I felt like you still had a question. I've been waiting for you to ask it. You can be the last question, and we're gonna roll out of here. If not, I'll just roll out of here.
Since there's a lot of questions and I talk to you all the time, it's all good.
No, you could ask it, because sometimes the answers, like for sure, like help other people. Like I'm sure everything that I just answered for these other students helped everybody, including you. I'm sure hearing that.
Yeah.
So
okay then.
The questions are just not just like, oh, I'm answering your question. It's a question that might be helpful for everybody else.
Okay.
So don't ever feel like, oh no, I don't want to waste anyone's time.
All right. Well, I guess I wanted to ask about generating ideas. Like, I feel like you had mentioned it to one of their students. I think it was Lon. Is her name? She had those angel concepts, and then now she did some really badass, like extravagant designs. Totally. And I was thinking, like, how do I even do that? Because I realized that when you ask me to do thumbnails and then I go to do thumbnails, I'm not really going in with any ideas. And as I'm working on what I'm painting, it's hard to like think about like, oh, I should do this and then do that. And then this should be here because of this thing. I don't know. I don't know how to think like that yet. I was going to ask if you had any suggestions.
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, I know Brittany brought this up about like how she would gather reference after the fact. And I corrected her and said, I never encouraged that you should just not look at reference. I have a lot of metaphors and examples of why you should study and practice and all stuff, but it's like you should do all that stuff on the front end. And I made the point of the more you don't know something, the more you have to reference it. You have to prepare, right? And so this is no different. So if you feel like you don't come up with any ideas, and when you try to, when paper hits or pencil hits the paper and nothing comes out, then maybe you need to do ideas first and then begin the journey. And, or maybe start really rough, right? Like you just got to teach yourself. So for instance, like if you're coming up with like an idea of your character, that, all right, my character's a sci-fi and I want them to be vampires, okay? And I'm gonna go with that premise. So you can start writing down like a list of stuff. Vampires like blood. Vampires like don't like the sun. If they're in space, then they would definitely need like gold visors, gold plating, armor, maybe all this stuff. You try to come up with these ideas of what they could have, and then you just do like a rough sketch. Like you don't even have to paint it and be like, okay, here's my astronaut, sci-fi, gold plated vampire, and be like, you know what would be cool? Like they, like their visor actually gets filled up with blood. There was a movie called Abyss where they, to help with decompression, they would have water in their actual helmet, and there was like breathable water. It was a cool concept. So I was like, what if that's the same idea, but now with vampires and blood? You know, so then I'll design that. But I can see it and I can get an idea. It's like, okay, what else would vampires need to help them be dope sci-fi vampires? I was like, okay, well, vampires suck blood, and it's really valuable to them. So maybe they need some sort of like tongs or something, or some sort of spikes that then connect to some sort of tank in the back of their body that they can stab into somebody, because they can't obviously bite them. And that's what fills up their visors with fresh blood. You see how that's working? Like, I'm not even drawing anything good. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm just writing it down. And then I go in and just start to do that, right? See, the reason why it looks so effortless for me is because all the things that you guys are probably thinking about, like how to render, how to paint, how to get the anatomy right, get the design right, like in terms of shapes, right? Try to get the perspective right, you know, like all of these things that I'm listing.
Yeah.
That's on your mind too. So when you're trying to like design, it's hard. It's hard to get that on the forefront of your mind and design specifically for ideas. So what does that mean? You got to supplement that. You got to come up with ideas first, and then try to like execute. And the reason, going back to why I said like it's easier for me, is because all those things I mentioned before, like lighting, rendering, perspective, all that stuff, right, are less of a problem for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I'm coming up with ideas and I'm like also painting relatively well, it's an illusion. You know, it's an illusion that you're seeing in front of your eyes. It's like a magic trick. But the reality is that I'm thinking about all this stuff while I'm doing it. What may have helped Lan was that she was basically focused on line art. So she had removed the rendering, the lighting, you know, the materials. She was just focused on core ideas, right? That's why line art usually does really well with generating ideas too. You know what I mean? Because there's less things to stress out about in terms of the process. But the better you get at the process, then the easier it is to just kind of be free thinking, right? Like it'd be like when you're telling or doing a free writing assignment for like English or something, okay? And you didn't even know how to write words, like you don't know even how to spell, right? That would be like the number one issue you'd be running into, you know, like constantly like trying to like look up words and how to spell them. That could be a problem in terms of free writing. So in that instance, maybe the way you have to free write is by using like a video recorder or even like a voice recorder. Do you get my point?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Versus like trying to write it because you don't know how to write. And then in the meanwhile, you're learning how to write. You're typing and doing stuff. I mean, you don't actually technically need to learn how to write in that instance, because people don't actually do that, and they give it to a ghostwriter, and they actually do it for them. They'll go and actually write the stuff. In this instance, as a concept artist, you can't get like a ghost concept artist to paint your artwork.
Outsource it to like Bangladesh.
I mean, you probably could. That's actually, It'd just be really funny. You get I get hired. Like, it'd be funny if you guys found out that like I'm not actually painting this right now. It's some
You're like playing Overwatch like in the background.
some poor kid in China is like actually just like he's the real Anthony Jones, and I'm just
The whole time.
all this is an illusion. There is no real Anthony Jones.
He's like in the middle of the protest, like still painting, sitting on a bench.
They got a writer's block, and my style changes dramatically. Anyway,
I want to follow up with a short aside. The example you gave was a very, very loose, rough sketch. Is that exactly like enough, or should I try a little? Like, should it be thumbnail level, or should it be like that lo-fi or whatever?
So the point is that you just need to come up with ideas. So if it needs to be a little bit more elaborate for you to understand what the fuck you even did, that's fine. But if it's like simple as just like you need to just kind of have to get it out of you so you can see it in a very abstract sense and then try to execute, and that works better for you, then do that. For me,
so it just depends on what works.
Yeah, for me, that I actually would do it as loose as you saw it. I would draw it super loose. And the reason why is because I am not trying to draw good. I'm trying to come up with good ideas. It's a different problem to solve, you know? And so when I first started out, I would just draw poorly because I was trying to get better ideas. I wasn't trying to get a better drawing. And once I had a better idea, then I tried to draw it well.
Okay. And I actually just thought of one really, really quick. What kind of times should we focus on when timing ourselves for the different subject matter? Does that make sense? So like, for what should our goals be for painting a full character in terms of timing ourselves, and versus like thumbnails?
The full character, like getting it rendered, is that what you're talking about? Like,
what should our goals be?
I think that a full character design from start to finish, and I don't mean just like rendering, I mean like including thumbnailing, coming up with idea, a good timeline for a professional is somewhere within a week. Okay. And that's if you're doing full-time character designing. And that's one character idea. Like that means you can thumbnail all that stuff and do iterations in the first few days. And then the last few days, you just render it. And the more you do it, the more those get intertwined, where the rendering and the design process become one and the same. But in the beginning, it's not like that. And I say
I don't think I was as clear. I meant like, what should I set my timer as? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. But I'm just saying that depending on
giving a bigger picture answer.
Yeah, depending on where you're at, it could vary. For instance.
Yeah. Okay, I get you.
So, for instance, like if getting the idea is more valuable to you, then the last part of like the rendering could actually only be like a few hours, right?
Yeah,
but if the idea is like you can come up with them pretty well and you feel pretty confident, but you also lack a lot of skills in terms of painting and rendering, then it might be 12-20 hours to actually do a really good painting of a character, you know? So it's all dependent on where your skill level is at, right? And you have to reach a specific bar that you have for yourself by artists that you already admire doing what you want to do. Like for instance, when I first started, I used to look at Wang Wei's paintings all the time as a quality bar for me, you know, even to this day, you know, and it takes a while. Like even right now, like this might feel really clear and very rendered for most of you guys, right? This is all done within about an hour and a half or so, right? If I were to spend another 3 hours on this, I could probably make this look pretty great, you know? But the question I usually ask myself is like, do I need to spend another 3 hours on this? Or would my director understand what they're looking at just from this image alone, you know? And depending on who I'm working with, sometimes they do want me to go extra. But as a concept artist, very rarely do we need to go super, super, super rendered. But yet I still encourage people to do it because you won't be like unprepared for it when people actually ask of you. And the instances when people ask for you to render it more thoroughly, are usually when you are working with outsiders, like outsourced artwork, because you're gonna be handing it off to somebody that might not be able to understand your design unless you fully realize the design.
Yeah, that's all for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, cool. All right. I'm going to stop here. All right, guys. Thanks for the great work. The very first week was a success. I'm very happy with all of your guys' work. Good job. And wait, I heard about a person who was hired to do coding, but he never did any of the work and hired contractors to do it. Yeah, I mean, like you could even make that case for artwork. To be honest, you'd just be like a self-made art outsourcing company, but there's nobody would know. But anyway, I'm gonna leave it alone. Talk to you guys later. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys next week, friends. Peace out. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you liked the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.